Ryuk is it's a fictional character in a manga series out of Japan. I don't really follow it too much, but it's also the name given to a specific ransomware family that has been known to follow specific patterns, uses a specific set of tools, and has been attributed to a specific set of actor groups. It's a little loose. They don't really advertise the way that a real branded business would. But this is what's been gathered. So what I want to do is I want to walk through an anatomy of a specific attack. So this is our part 0. So we're going to set the stage here. It was first identified in the wild in 2018, suspected as 2 or more Russian criminal cartels, but then again, it could be North Korea, China. It's really hard to say. They don't really put up big signs. Typically infiltrates via phishing after harvesting data. It then opens up manual control. Basically, the first initial harvesting appears to be allowing the adversaries to determine whether it's really worth their time with hands on keyboard to go pursue this particular victim, or whether they want to move on to a bigger whale. There are methods and indicators of compromise. Again, phishing emails containing Microsoft attachments, heavy use of PowerShell. They do exploit known vulnerabilities, and we see privilege escalation, and then there's some other markers. So they heavily use a lot of open source tools to move around in the network. Ransomware group, this is one of the ones that did not stop attacks on healthcare organizations in the last year. And so they really have very low set of standards for who they're going to victimize. And they've been proven to be relatively ruthless in the collection of ransom. So let's go walk through a particular attack. Today, we're going to focus on an attack that occurred on September 22nd of last year. This is the bad guys had a phishing campaign that they sent out to a particular customer or victim. And all it takes is one person to double click on a document. That document executed a malicious executable known as, I'd probably get the pronunciation wrong, this barrel loader. It's a modular malware as a service downloader. And it was first showed up in 2019 for sale. So this is a component that a lot of bad guys can use. And it provides essentially it's a distribution service, sells for $350, has add-on modules. So again, as AK mentioned, this is a whole economy of parts and programs that malicious actors can use to construct their campaigns. It loaded a Cobalt strike beacon. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Cobalt Strike, which is ostensibly designed for attacker emulation and pen testing, but it's proven to be a very popular tool with threat actors because it's a very modular tool, provides a wide range of tasks, provides access to operating system features, establishes covert command and control channels, and so it's a favorite. So over the next 90 minutes in this attack, this particular attack, multiple Cobalt Strike beacons were dropped on the target workstation and started doing reconnaissance and hunting for credentials. After a few hours, the adversary started their manual reconnaissance of the network and started executing a number of commands on the infected system. By the next morning, the adversaries started using admin credentials to connect to a domain controller where they performed a data dump of the Active Directory, most likely using a tool called SharpHound. It's a data ingester tool, and it starts pulling data from compromised domain controllers and domain administrator accounts. Then adversaries dropped another Cobalt Strike executable a few hours later. followed by the installation of another service on the domain controller. The new service is a change message block listener, so it allows the Cobalt Strike commands to be passed around to other servers and other computers on the network. Adversaries then use WMI to execute a few more Cobalt Strike beacons and drop them on several of the servers in the victim's environment. Additional malicious services were then created on more servers using the same admin credentials that were stolen. One of the services is configured, it's an encoded PowerShell command, which launches more Cobalt command pipes back to their control servers. So next day, alert on the 23rd, now we're in the early afternoon. They start doing reconnaissance activities. They start wandering around the network, trying to identify more potential targets for lateral movement. They then use commands to start retrieving data from domain controllers. Other commands are then used. They start looking for specific servers, trying to gain more access to a broader set of machines within the network. They also start checking against network shares, looking for more places where data might exist, and for other machines to compromise. Start looking for remote desktop sessions, etc. So here now it's been less than 24 hours, and they're performing reconnaissance across the entire network. So by now we're in the early afternoon. We're still less than 24 hours from the first double click of that email. So now the attackers start running PowerShell commands to start generating dump files with their login, domain controller, operating system information for all of the Windows computers within the network. A malicious proxy is now installed on the domain controller and creates scheduled jobs so that it can continue and maintain its persistence over the long term. They again use PowerShell to set up some folders and start executing scans on the network to looking for what machines and which systems are active. And they also start looking for what AV and other protection services are available within the environment. They then use more methods in succession, attempting to spread the file. So if one attack doesn't work, they switch to a different tactic. And if that one works, they then exploit that one. So a couple of notes here. Now we're 24 hours in. Most of the actions that are taken here are not programmatic. It's not like they're running a single executable that's running here. These are actions that are being performed live with hands on the keyboard. So they do their initial compromise. The command and control channel comes back, says, yep, I got a live one on the line here. Then hands get on the keyboard and they start exploring, start using various tools to run reconnaissance and to prepare themselves for the attack. Also at this point, no encryption has started, and the executable that does the encryption isn't even on the victim environment yet. So a signature check or looking at the executables really isn't going to help at this stage. So now we're very early in the morning. It's on the next day. Now the executable gets deployed to 40 of the victim systems. On the backup server, the attackers start modifying access controls and giving them full control of all of the system folders. They deploy a rootkit detector to find and shut down hidden processes. They start shutting down the antivirus software. And so they're really now, they've launched the hands-on attack. So they've now deployed the executable, and within a matter of minutes, they drop the ransomware document and they launch the encryption on multiple threads, on multiple systems, all at the same time. So now we're about 30 hours in. As you can see, they've actually run a number of known tactics and techniques, starting from their initial spear phishing activity. They execute on the main target compromised system. They establish persistence, they establish privilege escalation, and then they start spanning across with the lateral movement and discovery, collecting more and more data, maintaining their command and control, and finally, at the very end, they drop the encryption software and detonate and look for the big payday at the end. So what do we learn from this one? This is a good example of a malware as a service campaign. It also illustrates very clearly that these are hands-on adversaries. You're not defending against a program or a known defined coded sequence that you can disrupt or crash or disable. These are highly adaptive adversaries. When they attempt something, if it doesn't work, then they switch tactics and try something else. They are very persistent as well. They didn't give up at the first block. They simply switched tools and attacked again. It leverages many highly available tools, Cobalt Strike, Bloodhound, Sharphound, etc., PowerShell. They leverage a lot of the built-in tools so that they can hide in plain sight, also known as living off the land. And the last thing to mention is that the ransomware or the encryption executable was the last thing on stage. Everything that occurred in the prior 24 hours was just preparation for that. So leading up to that final detonation, these tactics such as lateral movement, collection, command and control, all of these are actually detectable and blockable. But it isn't a matter of simply you block it once and you're done. You have to continue to defend against this attacker who is very persistent and who is looking for various weak links. But the encryption part is simply the last thing that occurs.